What time is it? It's nation time.
Bishop Mwenda, thank you so much for agreeing to join us again today on AfterWords. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm still vibrating off of the sermon you gave today titled Protecting Our Image. I loved it. And it was great to see the back and forth with the live congregation. I love that. Beautiful. And to see my beloved Shrine 9 again, it's a thrill for me. Can we talk about your sermon in a little bit more detail? One part, a summary, but also to connect it to the current time. I know you started off talking about how people were existing for a period in pre-election anxiety, and how today you were talking about post-election depression.
Right. And that was such a real reality for so many people, present company included.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, because there was so much going on around the election periods, so many, political pundits, of course, weighing in on both sides, and then to wake up on Wednesday to see, again, such a landslide, if you will, since we're on the backside of the election. Now we were dealing with the kind of like the post-anxiety period. But at the same time, the sermonic moment was really to remind ourselves that we've been here before. And we had to protect our image. We know that the election was certainly in part a pushback against the feminine energy, against this particular sister, if you will, because America just was not ready to deal with a Black woman in this position, because racism is still real. And so we had to deal with that. But we also, again, have to be very conscious of how we protect our image and know who we are, because the media is going to portray us as being one way, but we have to know who we are. And so Genesis speaks to that, being created in the image of God, man and woman, he created them, which the Africans understood that was this equality among the sister and the brother. It wasn't competing energies, but it was complementary energies, because both were created out of the very substance of God.
Yes. And you suggested, well, you were very clear about how the Europeans used the Bible to support the white supremacy, and particular white male supremacy. And you used chapter 1 to suggest, chapter 1 in Genesis, to say that there is one story in Genesis that tells us that God created man and woman at the same time, basically. And you move to chapter 2 to point to where the white supremacists get the image and use the image of women as lesser in the same Bible, but two stories in the same Bible, in Genesis. Could you say more about how the Europeans use the Bible that way?
Right. And Europeans, and then also by extension, because we use too often, African Americans have allowed Europeans to be the interpreters of scripture for us. Yes. And then we begin to buy into their narrative, right?
Yes.
Because we understand that African people, of course, had one way of understanding sisters and women as having equality. And then when the Greeks come in, the Greeks have a different understanding of women, more subservient, where a woman could not study as she could in Egypt without having a sponsor in Greek, and within Greek culture. And we have to understand that the Roman culture is a byproduct of the Greek culture. So the Romans thus take that same patriarchal stance that the Greeks took, which was antithetical to the Egyptians, right? So we begin to look at how one uses scripture, and what is being elevated is the scripture that says that the woman was created out of the rib of the man, knowing that a woman can't come out of a man, but out of a woman. But that scripture became elevated, even though at the same time you have another interpretation of scripture that I did not know until I joined the shrine, to be quite honest with you. When Reverend Sondai would be preaching about Genesis, and he would introduce to us about the doublet, this two different stories of the same event, right? And begin to understand why one gets lifted up to support, again, not only white supremacy, but also more or equally important, should I say, is patriarchy.
Yes.
Which is, again, and I say in the Bible, even when the Creator created the woman, the Creator didn't even ask the woman if she wanted to go to the man. So again, the person is taking agency away from and voice from the woman. So that's how we kind of look at those two stories and begin to see why one has been elevated over against the other.
Yes, it serves a particular line, a particular way of thinking, a way of being, and the purpose of creating an image of a people and of women. Yes, I see. Can you talk about how in the Shrines of the Black Madonna, I loved you mentioning that there was a conference in the shrine. I think you suggested it was in the shrine around theology. And I think you and maybe some other womanist thinkers raised the issue of where the women, or are women's interests the same as Black women's interests, the same as Black men? Would you say more about that?
Right, and I think what we're really we're getting to at that point is our own hidden bias.
Yes,
right? Because we had a program set up, but it did not list any Black African women in the list of presentations.
Yes,
which we thought was strange because we're the Shrines of the Black Madonna, and yet we don't have the female voice in this conversation. And one of the individuals said, "Well, their struggle is the same as our struggle." Well, spoken as a patriarchal person would speak.
Yes.
Like, oh, that's not important. They didn't mean any harm.
No.
But it was a hidden bias. So whatever patriarchy we have, we bring into the shrine with us. It's not part of our theology or anything like that, but we bring that into these spaces, both male and females. And so when we had this conversation, the person was like, "Well, we didn't know." I said, "Well, that's right. That's why we're pointing it out to you, because you can't see it. It's hidden." So it takes someone to mirror that to you, so that now it becomes part of your awareness, and now you can be more intentional about understanding that we all have these hidden biases. And that was one of them. So how can you be at the Shrine of the Black Madonna and not bring in African American sisters who are doing the critical work in biblical studies, like Katie Cannon, Dr. Jacqueline Grant, all these, pillars in our community who are doing the work that we didn't understand how we were overlooking that. And so we had to bring that to the fore.
I love that. And as you spoke then, I was reminded, and I'm reminded now, how your thinking is not limited in the same way as so many others. You particularly have a way of looking at the history of the shrine itself, the history of the Bible, the history of theology, in a way that just go to bold and new places. For me, bold and new places. You embody, as you said, the hermeneutics of suspicion.
Right, that's right. Hermeneutic of suspicion. So so in that, and I learned that, that's something that I've learned, both being in the shrine and also attending seminary and having the privilege of studying under Dr. Randall Bailey, who really embodies this understanding of making sure that the voices of sisters are heard. He's a person who, if there's a panel, if it's all men, that last time we spoke, he would not speak on it.
All right.
It had to have a sister present to have that conversation, because our sisters bring a unique experience to the text. They bring a unique experience to the world. That's why Vice President Kamala Harris, her insights, her energies, she would bring a different, though she is certainly not without influence from being in the belly of the beast, if you will.
Yes.
But what we know, it would still have been a different tenor of sort. from what we see and what we know now. So that's why I think that's very important that we have those voices, those sisters' voices, at the fore of everything that we're doing.
Yes, I hear you. As we speak of the conditioning, maybe that she may exhibit and we may exhibit coming from the belly of the beast, would you connect that to in the history of the Black nation Israel? When was a time when they were conditioned by living and growing, and at least their elite maybe, in the belly of their particular pathological empire? We, as a nation within a nation, as a nation within a pathological empire, we have our own conditioning. Where can we see that in the Bible, where the Black nation Israel itself its theology, its writings were being conditioned by being inside of an empire?
Yeah, and really, there isn't a time that Israel isn't under some occupation of some, from Genesis all the way to Revelations. From Egypt to the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, they've always been under some form of oppression. And oftentimes they began to look at other gods, began to look at other nations. They wanted the king like everybody else. They didn't want to necessarily live under a theocracy where God was at the center of the decision-making process. So they've always had this kind of glance, if you will, to what other people were doing. What the way they were serving their gods. Well, their gods were set up to deal with the conditions of that particular people. And so I appreciate the shrine by saying that God is known by many names, as not to have this Western hegemony about, if you don't say God in this way, that something is wrong or it's pagan. No, it's different. So the Black nation of Israel often found themselves kind of longing after other gods.
Yes.
As opposed to staying true to the God of their history, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who brought them out of Egypt, the God who protected them in the wilderness, rained manna from on high, because they had a relationship with that God. And the same will be true for Black people, that even inside of this yet to be United States of America, we have a relationship with our God that has receipts, right? That has been with us from the moment we were brought here in the bottom of slave ships, that we have survived every president that has come to these yet to be United States of America. And we have done so depending on the God of our history, depending upon, like to say, liberating our minds from the contamination of being inside the belly of the beast, because we're all swimming in this water and can be contaminated by the water. So the shrine, I always look at the shrine as a detoxing center.
All right.
That we can come into and try to detox from some of the negativity that is coming our way. And in doing so, we are able to protect our image. Yeah. Understand that we are created in the image of God, the Imago Dei. And so since we're created in the image of God, then we seek to do the will of God. We seek to allow that same energy and substance to come to bear on the world in which we live. So then we begin to co-create with God, because God is a creator. It's when God speaks, something happens. Same for us. When we speak, something ought to happen, because we are created in that image, and we have to protect that image at all costs, because others will tell you who you are.
Yes.
As opposed to taking your marching orders from the one who created us and said, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I knitted you in your mother's womb. I know you. The plans I have for you, not to destroy you, but to give you a nation, to see you prosper. But we have to protect that at all costs.
I say, Bishop, thank you so much for being with us to look a little further into your sermon, protecting your image. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
What time is it? It's nation time.